Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. I had always felt a sense of liberation whenever I headed to the coast. There was something about the rhythmic sound of the ocean waves and the wide-open sky that made my usual truck routes feel miles away. That summer, with the humdrum of work needing a break, I decided on a spontaneous seaside vacation. I booked a room at a quaint inn in a town I'd never been to before, seeking a change of pace. The inn was charmingly old-fashioned, with whitewashed walls and a floral garden that seemed to bloom more vibrantly each day. Each morning, I'd start my day with a stroll along the pier, where the sea breeze tangled with my thoughts. One morning, I found myself drawn to a cozy cafe that seemed to be a local favorite. Its outdoor seating overlooked the water, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. I stepped inside, scanning the menu on the chalkboard, when I first saw her. Alice was behind the counter, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, and her eyes sparkled with a kind of warmth that immediately made me feel at ease. She wore a simple yet charming apron over her dress, and her smile seemed to light up the room. "Good morning," she greeted cheerfully. "What can I get for you today?" "Morning," I replied, returning her smile. "I'll have a coffee, please. Black. And maybe a croissant if you have any left." "Coming right up," she said, her eyes twinkling. "We've got a fresh batch of croissants today." "You're in luck." As she prepared my order, I couldn't help but notice how effortlessly she moved around the small cafe. It was as if she was perfectly in sync with the rhythms of the place. "So, what brings you to this corner of the world?" she asked as she handed me my coffee. "You don't look like a local," I chuckled, taking the steaming cup from her. "Just needed a break from my usual routine. I'm a truck driver. Sometimes the open road can get a bit monotonous. Decided to explore something new for a change." "Ah, a truck driver. That sounds interesting. Do you have any favorite routes or places you like to visit?" she asked, genuinely intrigued. "Well, I've got my regular routes, of course," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "But I love discovering new little towns along the way. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a wanderer." Alice's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful. I love discovering new places too. You know, there's a great little bookstore just down the road. They have an excellent collection of travel literature. You might find it interesting." "I'll have to check it out," I said, feeling a bit more connected to this place and to her. "I'm James, by the way." "Alice," she said, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you, James. If you need any recommendations or just want to chat about the best spots in town, feel free to stop by. I'm here most mornings." "Thanks, Alice," I said, shaking her hand. "I'll definitely be back." As the days passed, I found myself returning to the cafe every morning. Our conversations became a daily highlight, and I began to look forward to my time with Alice. We talked about our favorite books, music, and travel stories. We discovered that we both had a soft spot for the same obscure band from our city. One afternoon, as we shared stories of our lives, Alice looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, it's funny. We're so far from home, yet it feels like we've known each other forever." I smiled, feeling a warmth that was more than just the coffee. "Yeah, it does feel that way. It's amazing how connections can be made in the most unexpected places." Alice's smile grew wider, and for a moment, the bustling cafe seemed to fade away. We were just two people, sharing a moment that felt surprisingly significant. It was then that I realized my vacation was turning into something far more meaningful. After that unforgettable summer, the rhythm of my life had changed. I found myself eagerly anticipating my visits to Alice, each trip feeling like a breath of fresh air from the monotony of my truck driving routine. It was clear to me that Alice was no longer just a fleeting encounter, she had become a significant part of my life. Our weekend getaways turned into longer stays, and our conversations grew deeper. One night, as we walked along the pier, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I turned to Alice and said, "You know, I never thought a vacation could lead to something so special." Alice leaned her head on my shoulder, her voice soft but filled with warmth. Neither did I. It's amazing how life can surprise us when we least expect it. A few months later, Alice moved in with me. The transition was smooth, and our home quickly began to feel like a true shared space. We spent weekends exploring the city, finding new restaurants and cafes, and enjoying the simple pleasure of each other's company. Alice had a knack for making our house feel cozy and welcoming, with her little touches of decoration and the way she would light candles in the evening. One evening, as we cooked dinner together in our modest kitchen, Alice turned to me, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the overhead light. "James, do you ever think about the future? Like, what do you see for us?" I stirred the pasta sauce, considering her question. "Honestly, I see a lot of possibilities. I imagine us traveling more, maybe even starting a family someday. I want us to build something together, something lasting." Alice's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I love that idea. I've always dreamed of traveling, and having a family is something I've thought about too. It's wonderful to think that we could have all of that together." We spent the evening talking about our dreams and plans, feeling a sense of shared purpose and excitement. It wasn't long before we decided to make our commitment official. I proposed one night under the stars, and Alice's enthusiastic yes was the start of a new chapter in our lives. The wedding was small but intimate, held in a serene garden with just our closest friends and family. Alice looked radiant in her simple but elegant dress, and I felt a profound sense of joy as we exchanged vows. Our married life began with a sense of adventure. Alice continued working as a store assistant at a charming boutique, where her natural warmth made her popular among the customers. I admired her for the way she effortlessly connected with people, always managing to brighten their day. One Saturday morning, as we enjoyed breakfast together, Alice turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about our next vacation. We haven't really explored much beyond the city and the coast. What do you think about a road trip across the country?" I grinned, already imagining the journey. "That sounds incredible. I've always wanted to do something like that. We could visit all sorts of places, see new sights, and make some amazing memories." Alice's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Let's plan it. I want us to see as much of the world as we can together." And so, we began planning our grand adventure. Each weekend was filled with excitement as we mapped out routes, researched destinations, and made lists of must-see spots. Our road trip became a symbol of our shared dreams and the life we were building together. Our home became a place of laughter and love. Alice had a way of making everything feel special, whether it was a quiet evening at home or a grand adventure. We were partners in every sense of the word, and as our lives intertwined more deeply, I couldn't help but feel that we were creating something truly beautiful. It was an ordinary afternoon, just another day in the life of a truck driver. I had completed my delivery and was heading home, enjoying the rare calm of the open road. My mind wandered as I drove, thinking about the weekend plans Alice and I had made. Everything seemed perfect, until something unusual caught my eye. I noticed my car, a beat-up old sedan I was particularly fond of, driving a few vehicles ahead of me. I was taken aback. I could have sworn I left it parked in our driveway. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt a surge of unease. Who could be driving it? I followed at a distance, my curiosity and concern growing with every turn. The car veered off the main road into a private sector, an area I wasn't familiar with. I parked a few blocks away and watched as the car stopped in front of a nondescript house. My pulse quickened. I saw Alice step out of the car, looking around before walking inside with a man I didn't recognize. My gut twisted with a mix of confusion and dread. I fumbled for my phone, trying to calm my shaking hands as I started recording the scene. From my vantage point, I could see Alice and the man, Philip, as I later learned, walking up to the front door, chatting animatedly. My heart ached as I watched them. They seemed so at ease with each other, their laughter echoing through the quiet street. The hours felt like they dragged on as I waited, the sky slowly darkening. When Alice and Philip finally emerged, their interaction was too intimate for mere friendship. I captured it all on video, my mind reeling with disbelief. That night, when I confronted Alice, I was a bundle of raw emotion. I showed her the video, my voice barely above a whisper as I struggled to keep my composure. "Alice," I said, my voice trembling, "I need you to explain this." Alice's face went pale as she watched the footage. Her hands flew to her mouth in shock, and tears welled up in her eyes. "James, I can't explain. I'm so sorry." I struggled to control my anger and hurt. "How long has this been going on? How could you do this?" She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "It started a few months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen, James. I was feeling lost. It was a mistake." I could feel my heart breaking. "A mistake? This isn't just a mistake, Alice. This is betrayal." Alice reached out, her voice breaking. "Please, James. I never wanted to hurt you. Philip and it was a mistake. I'm so sorry." I wanted to believe her, but the pain was overwhelming. "Sorry doesn't change what's happened. How can I trust you again after this?" Before I could react, the doorbell rang. Philip stood there, his face a mix of defiance and guilt. "James, I'm here to talk." I could barely contain my fury. "What's there to talk about, Philip? You've already done enough." Philip's voice was defensive. "I didn't mean for things to get this far. I thought what?" I interrupted. "That you could waltz into my life and just take what's mine." Alice stepped between us, her voice pleading. "James, please. Let's not do this here." But the confrontation was already out of control. Words were exchanged, and tensions flared. In the heat of the moment, a struggle ensued, and before I knew it, Philip was lying on the ground, unconscious. I was horrified as the reality of what had just happened hit me. The police arrived, and the scene was chaotic. I tried to explain what had happened, but nothing could undo the damage. Philip was pronounced dead at the hospital, and the legal consequences of the confrontation were inevitable. Alice and I were left in a state of shock and devastation. The trust we had built was shattered, and the life we had dreamed of together seemed to crumble. The divorce proceedings were swift, and though it was painful, it was the only way forward. As I packed up the remnants of our life together, Alice's tears and apologies felt hollow. I had lost not only a partner but also the future I had envisioned. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I knew I needed to find a way to move on from this heart-wrenching betrayal. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil. The house, once a sanctuary filled with shared memories, now felt like a prison of grief and regret. I moved out as soon as I could, renting a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It was a modest space, but it gave me the solitude I needed to process what had happened. Alice and I had officially divorced, but the emotional scars lingered. The legal system had ruled Philip's death as an accident during a heated argument, but the media coverage and legal proceedings left their mark on both our lives. One morning, while going through the final paperwork, I received a call from Alice. Her voice was shaky, and she sounded distraught. "James, I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I hesitated, but something in her voice made me agree. We met at a small park where we had often spent peaceful afternoons. Alice looked different, her once bright eyes were now dull, and her demeanor was subdued. "I didn't think you'd want to see me," she began, her voice trembling. "But I needed to apologize. Everything has been falling apart, and I needed you to know how sorry I am." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "I'm listening, Alice. But I don't know what you expect from this." Alice took a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. "After everything that happened, I've lost my job at the store. People know about the affair, and it's like my entire world is crumbling. I don't know how to fix this." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, though my tone was flat. "But you need to understand that I'm not the one who can help you fix this. The trust we had is gone, Alice's voice grew more desperate. I know, James. I understand. I don't know how to move on. I keep replaying everything in my head, and it's driving me crazy. I looked away, the pain of our past still raw. You made choices that affected both our lives. I'm trying to move forward, and I think it's best for both of us if we let go. Alice nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just wanted you to know how much I regret everything. I wish I could go back and change it all. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her. But I also knew that I needed to focus on my own healing. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. The solitude of my apartment gave me time to reflect and find solace in simple things, long drives, reading, and reconnecting with old friends. I took up a new hobby, woodworking, which provided a creative outlet and a sense of accomplishment. One day, I ran into an old friend, Mark, at a local cafe. He could see the change in me and asked, James, how are you holding up? I've heard about what happened. Are you doing okay? I took a sip of my coffee, feeling a sense of calm. I'm managing. It's been tough, but I'm starting to find my footing again. I've been keeping busy and focusing on moving forward. Mark gave me a supportive smile. I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes, the hardest part is just getting through the day. But it sounds like you're on the right track. His words were a small comfort, and I realized that the road to recovery was a gradual one. I began to embrace the idea that while my past was marked by pain and loss, it didn't define my future. Alice's life continued to spiral. She struggled to find stable work and faced the consequences of her actions. It was heartbreaking to watch, but I knew there was nothing more I could do to help her. Her journey was one she had to navigate on her own. As time passed, I started to find happiness again. I met new people, explored new places, and rediscovered my passions. The lessons learned from the ordeal shaped me into a more resilient person, and I embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. The past was a chapter in my life, but the future held promise. I had learned that even from the darkest moments, it was possible to find light and forge a new path.